Hey everybody, this is Seth with SethPerler.com, and I'm glad you're here. Look, this is an important day because I'm about to teach you about the Homework Continuum Deluxe. Now, you might be asking yourself, what makes it deluxe? And the answer is absolutely nothing. I just think it sounds cool, and I have a low self-esteem, and I think that if I say deluxe, it makes it sound cooler and it makes me look cooler, so it just helps me out a little bit. So if you can accept that, we're going to be good. All right, here we go. How you doing? All right, I am going to tell you about something serious, and it is the homework continuum. And the reason that this is so important is because the students that I work with, the right brain students that are struggling in school, that are not getting the grades that reflect what they're capable of, or that reflect their intelligence or their mind or their creativity, these students often struggle, pretty much always struggle, with executive function. So that's the brain's ability to execute a task. Now, if I were to execute a task, for example, picking up this marker, that is a very simple task. It does not require much executive function. But to do homework, it requires a ton of executive function. And the mistake that people make, that students, parents, and teachers make, is we sort of think of homework as one thing. Go do your homework. I gotta do my homework. It sounds like it's one thing, but it's actually many things. I'm going to break that down for you right now. And the value in breaking down this continuum deluxe is that was kind of weird, huh? Oh man, my self-esteem just went down again. Let me rip. Just kidding. All right, back to it. The value in doing in understanding the homework continuum and breaking it down into small chunks is that then you can look at each chunk individually and figure out real solutions to help work with that particular aspect of the homework continuum. So there is a beginning and there is an end to homework. Okay, I'm going to go through how you get homework done beginning to end. At the very beginning, you have the homework has to be assigned, and it has to be clearly assigned, because a lot of times my students are coming into my office, I'm working with them, and they don't understand the homework. They don't have a good place to reference it online. A lot of teachers don't make it clear on the papers that they hand out what it means. I'm confused half the time. So is it clearly assigned? Now, if the teacher clearly assigns it in class verbally, and the student is having trouble taking it in verbally because they could be stressed, they could be bored and uninterested and unengaged, they could be looking at somebody else in the classroom who's talking, they could be engaging in talking or writing notes to somebody else. I mean, if they're not fully engaged and the teacher's trying to assign something verbally, or if they have an auditory processing disorder or any number of things, they're not going to get it clearly. So even getting the clarity of what's required on the assignment is one step in and of itself. And if that's an area that's troublesome, then that's one area that you address separately. It's not just doing homework. Remember, this is one piece right here. After that, you have to accurately record the homework, okay? Whether you memorize it, write it on a sticky note, look online to see what the teacher has written about the assignments, if they've even done that. Look at the paper that the teacher gives you, if it even clearly states it, or use a planner, which using a planner effectively, the right planner, the right way for right brain students is very important. So that in and of itself, some method of accurately recording the clearly assigned assignment is a step in and of itself. Moving on. Next thing we have to do is the student has to remember to even do the assignment. They have to even remember to look in the planner or to know that the assignment exists once they've left school or once they're in study hall or wherever they are. And again, with all of these deal with the prefrontal cortex. These deal with executive function, the brain's ability to execute a complex, and this is a very complex task. So to remember to even do it, your brain has to use what's called working memory, which is like juggling balls. It's like, it's keeping the things that are important in your mind. Well, they have to be using working memory to even remember to do it. Next, we have self-starting. Now, in executive function speak, this is called task initiation. So to initiate the task, to start to get going, to get the train moving. A train at a standstill is very difficult to get started. It requires an enormous amount of energy. And for these students, it requires even more energy to get started. So just to start is a huge issue for 99% of the students I work with. Self-starting is an issue. So that in and of itself is one piece of the puzzle. Then they have to follow through. They have to not only start, but they have to, if they get derailed, get back on track. That's a great metaphor for the train. And people usually are able to get derailed and get derailed a little bit, but my students tend to get way derailed and have a lot of trouble getting back on track. So follow through, that's a part of task persistence, which is executive function also. Persistence is the EF term for follow through or stick-to-itiveness. Now you have to follow through until completion. And a lot of my students don't complete everything 100% and then they don't turn it in at all. So that can be problematic because they just need to get in the habit of getting it in even if it's 80% done. So complete follow through isn't always necessarily necessary, especially when we're building habits. But this is a huge part, again, of executive function. So that's a piece that needs to be examined, broken apart, and looked at how just to deal with the follow-through aspect. Then you have to worry about transport. Transport means how do we get it from home, at the kitchen table or the desk or wherever they're doing their homework, into the folder, into the backpack, into the bus or the car or whatever, back to the school. So how do we even transport it? That in and of itself is a system that a lot of students don't really take time to craft, and families don't understand. Parents are often baffled at how can this piece of paper not make it back to school. So transportation, and that's an executive function thing too, like dealing with systems and details in terms of how to systematize getting it from point A to point B. That's something that needs to be looked at. And finally, it's got to be turned in. So the student has to be in the class, use executive function to say to themselves, I need to get that out of my backpack and hand it in to the teacher. Now, I think that my students are generally very well intended. They often legitimately forget. The teacher can even be saying, everybody turn in your homework right now. And I have teachers who say, well, I ask for the homework at the beginning of every period. Well, a lot of times these students with executive function have difficulty with transitions. So they're just transitioning into a new class. Their mind is still on the other class or on the social thing that happened in the hallway or whatever. So turning it in is a real challenge for even more reasons than I mentioned. I often will be doing a backpack overhaul with a student and we pull something out of the bottom of the backpack, out of the bowels of the backpack, and we find a paper that was due 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, and they say, oh, that's where that is. I thought I turned that in. A lot of times these students even literally, they've envisioned themselves with executive function or with the visual part of it, they've envisioned themselves turning in the work, but they didn't do it. But they often will misremember. And anyhow, the point is that the Continuum Deluxe, the Homework Continuum, has a beginning and an end. It is not one thing, do your homework. It is many things. And when you break down these pieces and look at them individually, then you can help a student problem solve and come up with solutions to each one of them to help increase their independence so that they can better succeed at doing the homework. Now, this video doesn't even take into consideration whether or not the homework is valuable. Some homework is completely meaningless, complete BS. And I see that a lot here, and I have obviously very strong opinions about this, but this video doesn't even look at that. So that's a whole issue, another issue altogether. I really, just in a nutshell, don't think that homework should interfere with self-care time or family time. And there are sometimes legitimate reasons for homework, and sometimes there are not. But you really have to look at that as well. But anyhow, here you go. Here's the Homework Continuum. I hope this helps you. I hope this helps you look at the areas that you can break down to work on more specifically, to problem solve with, so that you can increase your independence and your success with whatever you're doing. Good luck to you. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and I'll see you in a week. Take care.